Okay, peeps, welcome back. So today we're going to be talking about Bitcoin and where Bitcoin and the indicators are heading over the next 6 months. So with that being said, let's get it. All right, so we'll get into the chart of Bitcoin here in a minute. I was actually having some issues with the charts and the way they were looking on the last video, so I had to redo this entire thing. So let's go ahead and go over the portfolio. As you guys can see here, this is the portfolio. Ever since the peak that we had on Bitcoin at 75,000, you guys can see it has dropped quite a bit. All I can say about this is, if you can't handle the heat, then don't go into the kitchen. Crypto is a very volatile asset. It's the most volatile asset in the world, or assets, I should say. Do be prepared that your positions could go up 50% or go down 50%. That's just the nature of crypto. So we do have a bunch of positions here, as you guys can see. And by the way, that is not financial advice. I'm just saying, if it's too risky for you, then maybe reconsider. So Filecoin, AIOZ, Render, Dash, Banker, Crypto.com, Horizon, Scale, Ethereum Engine, Zcash, Litecoin. We do have some Algorand as well, but it's not actually on here. So a lot of positions we're invested in. As a matter of fact, these prices are becoming so cheap at this point that we're actually considering starting to go full on back into crypto because it's come down enough to where we feel like it's probably about the right time to start getting in. So crypto, as you guys can see, the search term here is still relatively low. So again, I would argue that this is a very bullish chart. When we saw the peaks in the previous cycle, it was at a 70 and 100. This indicates that we're still very early and retail has not really come in yet. Now, Ethereum, spot Ether ETFs were approved by the SEC, but we haven't seen any ticker symbols be listed yet. So kind of in limbo on that one right now. We'll just kind of have to wait and see what happens. Keep you guys updated as we come across wherever the listings might be and what they are. But the Ethereum still being at an all-time low, search term is still very bullish in my opinion. It means we're still very early. And if I type in crypto here, you guys can see that we're also still very low on this. We're at a 14, whereas the peaks previously were at 70 and 100 respectively. So basically, this is a very bullish chart. This means that there's still plenty of time for us to get into crypto before the masses roll in, before the Fed cuts rates, before the dollar index weakens, and Bitcoin smashes to all-time highs at the end of the year. So crypto fear and greed. This thing's still very much in the greed territory. It's been kind of stuck at the same area for a while. Again, we are having a pullback in time, so I wasn't expecting this to change much. I'd say it's probably going to bounce somewhere between 50 to 100. I don't suspect we're going to get an extreme fear reading unless something really cracks in the economy, which I don't see that happening. We're in a presidential election year, so and midterms as well. None of these politicians are going to want the markets or anything in the economy to look bad, because that puts their jobs at risk, and they don't want that. When you understand these kinds of things, you understand why they do what they do. So MVRV, this still looks very bullish. It's still cheap in my opinion. I think this is just a precursor to the real parabolic run we're going to see in crypto, which I don't think we've seen yet. Most of the moves that we saw were basically from the spot Bitcoin ETFs. If we did not have that, we'd probably still be sitting down here somewhere. In my opinion, I don't think we're really going to see the real true parabolic phase of this crypto cycle until probably December this year and January next year, or maybe even November of this year. Right around the time of the elections, I suspect, is when the MVRV score is going to start going up massively, because every time you guys can see, based on previous cycles, this thing has predicted the top perfectly, and every single time it has topped out, it has been somewhere in these pink boxes. So the Bitcoin rainbow chart still sitting at the buy zone. I suspect Bitcoin, once it tops out on this thing, is going to be somewhere between still cheap and hodl. Maybe this is a bubble. Maybe is this a bubble? It might be in that area. Maybe by the end of 2025, I would still argue that probably somewhere between 150K to 250K, maybe 300,000 would be the peak for Bitcoin on this bull run. So Nupal chart. This one, again, is kind of a bit skewed. It's a little expensive. A lot of this was factored in because of the spot Bitcoin ETFs. I'll get into this thing selling off here in a little bit when we talk about Ether, but as of right now, I do suspect likely this thing is going to pull back a little bit at some point in the future. But this is a little bit more bearish chart. We shouldn't be even close to this at this point in time. This shouldn't be starting to happen until, like, I would say probably February or March of next year. We should still be somewhere in these green and white boxes. But again, the spot Bitcoin ETFs have kind of changed that. Pi cycle top indicators. So two major things to point out here. Well, three actually. So current prices, basically 66,000 is the bottom, 90,000 is the top. You can see the current price of Bitcoin is 66,000. Usually before this thing has its parabolic breakout, it does kind of bounce around in between these EMAs. You can see it's doing it right now. It needs to get above 90,000 to actually break out to basically get that parabolic move, as you guys can see here. So previous cycle, we did get a retest multiple times of the yellow EMA, kind of got stopped at the green one, and then boom, ripped to the upside. 2017, we had a lot of bounces in between the EMAs before it eventually ripped, retested, and then took off. And then 2013, we had a couple bounces in between the EMAs, and then eventually it just straight ripped to the upside and then took off, and actually had a second peak as well. So the next phase of this thing is basically to get some kind of bounce and then a rip to the upside is pretty much what we're looking for here. So Bitcoin, a couple of things I want to point out here. So we have some bullish patterns, okay? So we have a massive, huge, and I do mean huge, basically since, well, actually I got to move this a little bit because, again, like I said before, y'all, I had to kind of change the charts a little bit, but because for some reason this thing was on log. Thank you, Atticus, for pointing this out, but I didn't realize this was on log, but now I do, and it's been changed back. So as you guys can see, we have this humongous ascending triangle here. Okay, this thing is absolutely ridiculous. So again, if Bitcoin were to pull back all the way to this trend line right here, which I don't see as likely, it'd be roughly about 37,000. But if I were to do the target on the ascending triangle, I mean, this thing is just going to be absolutely ridiculous. So, and again, this does not have to happen. It could happen. Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. But the target for this thing would be pretty crazy. It'd be at $128,000, which I guess is not really so crazy. But when you think about it, it kind of is, because, I mean, whoever thought we would be talking about a six-figure Bitcoin? The first time we ever bought Bitcoin, it was at $8,000. So kind of crazy. So we still have the bull flag here. That's another bullish pattern. Again, the target for that is all the way up there at 125,000. We also have the hammer candles. So hammer candle happened here. We do expect a massive rip at some point as a result of this. You can see last time we had one right here. This one, big move up straight out of that channel there. We also had one right here, right along this trend line. Absolutely took off like a beast. This one took off a little bit. And then we had this one back here, which was really obvious, and then took off a lot to the upside. So every single time we've had a hammer candle at the swing low, this thing has generally moved pretty significantly to the upside. Bitcoin price still sitting above the EMAs. Bitcoin price still sitting above support. It's still kind of just getting that pullback in time. It's not really going up, not really going down, mostly just going sideways. So there's a few potential scenarios here. This thing could go up to 90,000, retest the Bitcoin Pi cycle top, green EMA before breaking out, which is again at $90,000. It could go all the way up to the bull flag target, which would be beyond the green EMA, which again is 125,000. Or we get a pullback in time until December. It does absolutely nothing. And then we get Bitcoin's true move in December to roughly about the end of Q1 of next year. Or this thing does pull back and it kind of pulls back all the way into this trend line. Now, I actually got to readjust these trend lines a little bit because we're not on the log chart anymore. We're actually on a regular chart. Thank you again. I did not even notice that was the case. But if we get a pullback to that, again, it lines up pretty much perfectly with the bottom of the flag. So roughly about 57,000 would be pretty much about Bitcoin's bottom for the first major test of Bitcoin. Even at those prices, I would say that crypto is still relatively cheap. So either a break to 90K, pullback in time, or a pullback maybe to 57,000 is what we'd be looking at. Do keep in mind that the monthly candle on Bitcoin's all-time high did break and close above the previous monthly candle. Every time we've ever seen this ever in Bitcoin's history where it's broken these peaks here, it has led to higher prices. So you guys can kind of see, like, if I draw a trend line, or not a line, but a line straight across from these candle top bodies in 2017, and we got a breakout here. You can see the breakout was just astronomical. We got this big green candle flush straight into the top, and then boom, just took off like a rocket ship. So that's something I want to point out. Other thing I want to point out here is the 12-month chart. So it's not something we look at a lot, but it is important. So you have basically 1-2 years of green candle after red, 1 bear market year, and then 3 bull market years, 1 bear market year, and then 3 bull market years, 1 bear market year, and we're currently in year 2 of the bull market years. So this tells me likely that we're not going to have the end of the bull market until the end of next year, is what things are looking like as of right now. So everything looks good on Bitcoin. Whether it could go up or down, well, that remains to be seen. I mean, again, we have the hammer candle here. Usually we've had pretty big moves off of one of those. This I would not consider to be a big move. I think that would just be a warm-up if this thing was going to break out. The other thing I want to point out here is the possibility of the spot ether ETFs being listed, like us getting actual ticker symbols, leading to an altcoin season. What would happen in this case is that money would probably, if the cycles remain true, money would probably flow out of Bitcoin into Ethereum, and Ethereum would moonshot, and altcoins would moonshot, and the Bitcoin dominance would fall off a cliff. Or maybe Bitcoin just keeps going sideways and slightly down, and then we have a massive alt season. But the thing I want to point out on the Bitcoin dominance chart is last cycle when we had one of these, we did have, so we had our major altcoin season right here. You can see this rising broadening wedge. We got a sell-off down below this trend line here. And then once we got that sell-off below in January 2021, we went sideways for a couple of months and then straight down. When we start seeing a flow of red candles like this indicates we are actually in an alt season. And if you're positioned in altcoins, well, I'm not going to say your altcoins will go up, but theoretically, in theory, when this thing does sell off, the Bitcoin dominance sells off, the alts usually do start ripping to the upside, 50, 100, 200%. It does happen. So this time we have a rising wedge instead of a rising broadening wedge. It's just a standard rising wedge. So you guys can see we actually have had a red candle close below that trend line. We did not get one for a long time, basically pretty much since the bear market lows. It has not cracked this trend line, and recently it just did crack it. So if it remains true like it did last time, we see a sell, or basically a candle close below, kind of chop sideways for a couple of months, and then boom, sells off to the downside. This would indicate maybe an altcoin season is coming earlier than expected, and this would line up perfectly with Bitcoin chopping sideways at the all-time highs. The listing of the spot Ether ETFs, we already know that the spot Ether ETFs got approved, so now we just wait for the listings, and the money flows out of Bitcoin into Ethereum and altcoins. That could happen. That also means that if the altcoin season is going to happen, that these grayscale trusts could be primed and ready to seriously start popping off in the next couple of months. No guarantees, but based on everything I'm seeing here, that does seem like the likely scenario. So again, none of this is financial advice. I'm just some dude showing you guys what's on the charts. So anyways, this is Bitcoin. I hope you all enjoyed this content. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see y'all later. Peace.